Iran is not ready to resume talks on its nuclear program just yet. That's according to the EU. Iran's new president, Ibrahim Raisi, is apparently unwilling to resume even indirect talks over the JCPOA. Meanwhile, anonymous U.S. officials have said time is potentially running out to come back to the table, putting in danger President Biden's stated claim of reviving this deal. This as Iran's influence continues to expand with neighboring countries. Iran will soon host talks on Afghanistan. And earlier this month, the country helped supply Lebanon with oil as that country continues to descend into economic and civil strife. For more on the latest on Iran nuclear talks, we'll go to RT's Paula Sleer.
It has been some 4 months since talks broke down between Iran and the international community over Iran's nuclear program. The EU chief director for talks recently returned from Tehran and says that the country is not ready to resume negotiations over its nuclear program anytime soon. But if there is some good news, it is that Tehran has indicated that in the coming days or perhaps the coming weeks, it will be ready to discuss the text that will be put forward with EU officials in Brussels. So far, Iran has refused to return to indirect negotiations with the United States over its nuclear program. And the U.S. has responded by saying that time is running short and time is critical. In the past, Tehran has said that it is willing to resume these negotiations, but hasn't given any kind of timeline. Now, Western diplomats are particularly concerned that the new negotiating team in Tehran, which is headed by a new president, could potentially come forward with new demands that are out of the scope of what was agreed to earlier. And of course, we're talking here about a new president, Ibrahim Raisi, who is much more hardline and anti-Western than his predecessor was. It also comes amid growing concern that within the region itself, the Middle East, Iran is flexing its muscles and growing its influence, particularly in countries like Lebanon, Iraq, and Jordan. And this concern was most vocally expressed by the Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. He was referring to recent incidents in Lebanon, where you had the gunfights that he has blamed and others on Hezbollah, and also at the recent elections which were held in Iraq, where we have seen the influence of the Iranian Shia militia. To quote the Israeli Prime Minister, both of these were the result of the Iranian touch. At the same time, there was recently a telephone call between the Iranian foreign minister and the Jordanian foreign minister, and both ministers discussed issues of mutual interest, particularly regarding economic opportunities, and they both said that they were keen to develop these relations. The Iranian foreign minister said that Iran is keen on supporting regional cooperation, but that it doesn't want to see any kind of foreign interference. Paula Sleer, In Question, Tel Aviv.
All right, let's get on the ground perspective from Professor Mohammed Marandi. He's a professor at the University of Tehran. Professor, President Biden's special envoy to Iran, Robert Malley, warns of a nuclear-armed Iran during a Carnegie Endowment virtual discussion. Does this then allude to the Biden administration not making any headway with new JCPOA talks?
Well, I think it's quite obvious that the problem does not lie in Tehran. The problem lies in Europe and the United States. It wasn't Iran that left the nuclear deal. It was the United States that left the nuclear deal. And it was the EU that left the nuclear deal alongside the United States. And they violated all of their commitments, every single one, and targeted women and children. So contrary to what was said before I began speaking, by your colleague, it's not the international community that's the problem. They don't have a problem with Iran. Iran's problem is with the United States and Europe. They violate deals, they target women and children, and then they blame Iran. Whereas Iran remained in the deal, they stayed in the deal, and continued to abide by their commitments, even after the Europeans and the Americans quit. Now, the Iranians are saying the only way for us to go back is for you to abide by all of your commitments and respect the spirit of the deal. And also, I'd like to add that the What happened in Beirut was that pro-American militias fired upon innocent protesters. The people who were killed were supporters of Hezbollah and their partners. So I find it a bit odd that the victims who were being shot at by snipers are considered the problem. But that's, I guess, another story.
Yes, I do think it's questionable about the sniper attack in Lebanon, in Beirut, during a visit that Victoria Nuland, the State Department #3, was visiting at that week. But again, like you said, that is a whole nother story. Back to the JCPOA, though, we know that Joe Biden was the vice president when Barack Obama brokered that deal in 2015. It's likely that Biden wants to restore it exactly the way it was before Trump unilaterally withdrew in 2018. Are the old terms of that deal enough for Iran, or is the Islamic Republic looking for more?
Well, the Americans are not even offering the original terms. The Americans and the Europeans are saying that we will keep some of the sanctions and significant portions of those sanctions, and you must give new commitments, and then we will carry out the deal. The Iranians are saying that's not the JCPOA. That's not the nuclear deal. We are not going to appease you. If we were going to appease someone, we would have appeased Trump. Why would we appease Biden, especially when the United States has so many internal crises, when the economy is in so much trouble, and the United States is withdrawing or retreating in the region, as we saw in Afghanistan. So for the Iranians, it's, if anyone is going to get anything extra, it's the Iranians, not the Americans. They're the ones who violated the deal. The Europeans violated the deal. The least they could do is to compensate. But they don't want to compensate. They want to make Iran accept new terms. That's unacceptable. But that's not, they don't represent the international community. They represent the old colonial powers whose powers are being undermined.
And Professor, you know, trust is obviously an issue here with the Vienna talks being put on pause, at least like you said, between the U.S. and Iran. Where does that leave the remaining members of the JCPOA, which include Russia, China, Germany, France, and the U.K., especially since the new president, Raisi, prefers to, at least it looks like he prefers to deepen economic ties with Russia and China, and reportedly he's not making the nuclear deal one of his top priorities.
Well, Russia and China have shown their support for Iran. They said that, look, it's not Iran that left the deal. It's not Iran that tore the deal. It's not Iran that violated the deal. It's Western countries that did so. So for Iran, that's an important sign for improving relations. And that's why Iran's policy, economic policy in particular, is Asian-oriented, and it wants to expand relations with the global south and non-Western countries. But France, Germany, and the UK, they basically follow the United States. They do what the United States wants, and that raises serious questions in Tehran. Should Iran even be negotiating with the Europeans when they have no authority, when they cannot make any decisions, when Washington dictates terms to them? It doesn't matter if it's Trump or Biden. And then the United States, on the other hand, when Obama was president, he signed the deal, but he never abided by the deal. He violated the deal from the beginning. Trump tore the deal. Biden criticized the deal, but he is pursuing the exact policies that Trump was pursuing. So why should Iran trust either Europe or the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. Same deal, new face on it, it sounds like. Professor Mohammed Marandi, thank you so much for your analysis of the situation.